How about the time I'm writing this? I think it's been long enough and safe for me to share this story with you guys. For security purposes, I'm not going to use any real names. I was 12 at the time, and my best friend, let's call her Sarah, was 11. She had her little sister, Chloe, tagging along. She was about 6 or 7, full of energy and endless questions. We had 2 dogs then. One was Baxter, a goofy golden retriever puppy that thought every stick was the best toy in the world, and the other was Luna, a shy little husky who'd follow me anywhere as long as I carried treats. It was a late summer evening, and we were buzzing with excitement over the idea of getting that perfect sunset shot for Instagram. You know the type: golden hour light, dreamy forest, backdrop, our puppies looking like models. We decided on this spot I'd scouted a week earlier, a stretch of forest just past the edge of our neighborhood. There was a proper entrance on Maple Lane with a wide dirt path and a sign warning about ticks, but we wanted a shortcut. Off the beaten track, there was this half-forgotten road behind an old block of houses, weeds growing through the cracks, rusted street lamp that didn't work. Nobody ever used it because it looked abandoned. It was faster though, so we grabbed the leashes and set off. I walked Baxter. Sarah had Luna, and Chloe held both our hands. She refused to use a leash. We joked about making the pups pose by a fallen log or a mossy rock. Baxter kept tripping over his own feet, tongue lolling out, and Luna kept darting into the underbrush, ears perked as though she heard something we didn't. I remember thinking it was weird. Luna never acted spooked, but I shrugged it off, blamed it on her being skittish around the wind rustling the trees. We reached the chain link gate at the end of the road. Its paint-peeling warning sign faded beyond legibility. I swung it open, and we ducked through. Behind us, the forest swallowed the path, branches arching over to make a tunnel of green and gold. Sunlight streamed through in shafts, dust motes dancing. We could see the big clearing ahead, the spot I'd picked out. I passed Baxter through the gate to Sarah's sister, laughing as he wiggled free. Chloe squealed because she thought it was funny, and then the 3 of us, me, Chloe, and Luna, took off running down that narrow, winding trail. Sarah lagged behind, or so I thought. I shouted, "Come on, slowpoke," but she didn't catch up. The sun was low, painting everything a deep orange, and the sky was streaked with clouds that looked like brush strokes. I got to the clearing and whipped out my phone, lining up the shot. Baxter finally staggered in tongue, dragging the ground, and Chloe tried to pose him by a wildflower patch. Luna hovered near my feet, whining softly, eyes wide. She'd never whined like that before. I glanced back at the trail entrance, expecting to see Sarah's lanky figure jostling through the trees. Nothing. My heart skipped, and I felt that first prickling of panic. "Sarah," I yelled, voice higher than I wanted. "Sarah, where are you?" No answer, but the distant rustling of leaves. Baxter growled low, a familiar protective rumble, and I realized Luna's whining was wound tight with fear. I grabbed Chloe's hand, and we scrambled back toward the gate. Chloe tumbled once, scraping her knee, but I yanked her to her feet before she could cry. Luna sniffed the ground, then bolted down the path, pulling me along. We burst through the old gate and into the abandoned road. My lungs burned. I kept calling Sarah's name, but it sounded hollow, swallowed by the trees. Halfway down the cracked pavement, I saw her. She was at the entrance to a side alley branching off the road, an old service lane flanked by high fences and overgrown shrubs. She was crouched, holding her head, shoulders shaking as if she were sobbing. Her face was pale, and for a second, I thought she was hurt. I ran toward her, Chloe's little hand wrapped tight in mine. "Sarah," I shouted. She looked up, eyes wide like saucers. Relief washed over me, and I lunged forward to pull her into a hug. Only she jerked back. Tears streaked down her dirt-smudged cheeks. Before I could say anything, Luna erupted in frantic barking, and Baxter skidded to a halt, hackles raised. My stomach dropped. Behind Sarah, half hidden in the dull shadows of the alley, stood a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed head to toe in black. His face was obscured by a hoodie, but I saw the glint of his eyes, cold, calculating. He took a step forward, and Sarah gasped, pressing her hands over her ears. I froze. Chloe clutched my leg, small fingers digging in. Baxter and Luna circled the man, barking ferociously. He didn't flinch. Instead, he advanced, slow and deliberate, hand outstretched. Sarah screamed, high and broken. He lunged, grabbed a fistful of her hair, and yanked her head back. The world exploded around us. Baxter bit at the man's calf, teeth sinking through fabric. He howled in pain, but didn't let go of Sarah's hair. Her scream was muffled against his fist. I shouted at the top of my lungs, "Get off her, you bastard!" Chloe wailed behind me, stumbling backward as the man reached for her. Panic fueled adrenaline. I grabbed a thick branch from the ground and swung it like my life depended on it. Crack! It connected with his elbow. He yelped, loosened his grip on Sarah's hair for a split second. That was all the opening Baxter needed. He lunged up, teeth sinking into the back of the man's leg. The man howled, stumbling backward, letting go of Sarah entirely. It felt like an eternity, but then the man turned and ran, limping back the way he came. Baxter and Luna chased after him in a flurry of fur. Sarah sank to her knees, trembling. I dropped the branch and pulled her into my arms, unsure whether to cry tears of relief or rage. Chloe dropped into a crouch beside us, hugging Sarah's leg, face pale and eyes huge. We didn't wait to see if he came back. I scooped Chloe into one arm, grabbed Sarah's with the other, and took off sprinting down the alley. My calves burned lungs, screaming, but I didn't slow. Baxter and Luna bounded behind us, barking as they ran. We spilled back out onto the abandoned road and kept going until the forest gate came into view. I nearly slammed into it, ripped it open, and we all piled through, kids and dogs tangled together. Once out of the trees, we veered onto the sidewalk of our neighborhood. The sun had dipped behind the rooftops, leaving a faint glow on the horizon. We didn't stop until we hit the little park a block from my house. It had a single bench under a lamppost that flickered on at dusk. We collapsed there, panting, knees scraped, hearts thundering so loud I thought they'd burst. Baxter flopped onto his side, tongue lolling, and Luna stood guard at our feet, hackles still raised. I looked at Sarah. Her face was wet, but the tears were quiet now. What the hell was that? I whispered, voice shaking. Chloe's lip quivered as she pressed her forehead against Sarah's leg. Sarah swallowed hard, took a shuddering breath. I don't even know, she said, her voice small. I turned down that alley because I thought I heard you guys calling. But then I got to the end, and it was dark. I couldn't see the forest entrance anymore, just this stupid alley. She rubbed her neck where the man had yanked her hair. I heard someone behind me and thought it was you, so I kept calling. And then I saw him. My stomach clenched. What did he do? She swallowed again. He grabbed me by the hair. I thought he was going to drag me back into the woods or something. I tried to scream, but he covered my mouth with his other hand. I tripped and my dog, Luna, started growling. She jumped at him, bit his leg, and he let go and ran. Chloe blinked up at us. He said things, bad things. She shivered. He said, "Stay here, little girls. I'm not done with you." I felt bile rise in my throat. Holy shit. We sat in silence until my mom found us. She'd been driving by looking for us, freaked out that we'd taken off at sunset. When she saw us, she slapped on the brakes and rushed over, hugging me so tight I thought she'd break my ribs. She looked at Sarah, at all of us, and I saw fear in her eyes that mirrored what I felt inside. After that, we told our parents. The cops came, took our statements, poked around the forest entrance and the alley. They found footprints, big rough prints in the dirt, but no one else reported seeing him. The tweet my dad posted on the neighborhood watch page got one reply from an old lady who said she'd been yelled at by a man in black around there 2 weeks ago. Said he looked under the influence and not friendly. She turned back before he could get close. It's funny how memory twists time. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still see that alley, the way the fence leaned, the way shadows pooled at my feet. I remember Chloe's face when she whispered his words. I remember Sarah's leg shaking when she told me she thought she was going to die. A few years later, I walked the same shortcut alone, just me and Luna, to get to the park. I wasn't going for photos anymore. I just needed a shortcut home. I almost turned back at the gate when I saw the alley ahead. My heart hammered, and for a moment, I swear I saw a shadow move at the far end. But it might have been a bird or just my mind playing tricks. I got up, kept walking, Luna at my side, eyes alert. Even now, when I drive past that abandoned road, or I hear rustling in the trees, my chest tightens. I don't talk about it much. People think I'm being dramatic. 12-year-olds get lost all the time, they say. But know what I saw and what he did. To the man dressed in black, let's not meet again. So I'll start this story off saying this came from the perspective of my boyfriend. We'd spent the evening hitting every dive bar and neon-lit pub we could find in downtown Portland, Maine. It was one of those late spring Fridays when the air still holds a chill even though the sun hadn't been up for hours. I was drunk enough to pass out the moment we piled back into the car. Me in the back seat, my boyfriend in the front passenger seat, and our two friends up front, one driving, one riding shotgun. We made a pact that night. Only one designated driver, all of us look out for each other, and no bullshit. None of us expected, though, that what we'd encounter on those dark country roads would turn a goofy Friday night into the kind of nightmare you replay in your head years later. Portland's city lights die off sooner than you think. 20 minutes out, you're on twisting two-lane roads with trees pressing in from both sides, black as pitch. Street lights? Forget about it. You learn quick in Maine to drive with high beams, but even then the road ahead looks like a tunnel carved out of shadow. That night, the driver, our friend Dave, had both beams blasting. The glow lit up the ditches and the skinny shoulder, but the thick wood on either side just absorbed it and swallowed it back up. I woke up at one point, mouth dry, heart pounding, thinking the car had crashed, only to realize we were cruising around 90 Dave, sneaking a grin at my boyfriend from the mirror. So, yeah, my boyfriend told me later, voice low, as he replayed it. We dropped Sarah off by her dorm, and it's maybe 2:15 a.m. when we get back on Route 216. We're all huffing and joking about the girl we saw at that last bar, how she was flirting with us so hard she practically tackled me. And then it all went to shit. All of a sudden, there he was, a man standing smack in the middle of the pavement, illuminated by our headlights like some horror movie extra. Shirtless, covered head to toe in mud, blood caked under his fingernails and gashes all across his torso. His jeans were shredded, hanging in strips, and he was waving both arms frantically back and forth like he was trying to flag us down. At first they thought it was a prank, some frat boy looking to get hit, or a drunken dare. But the moment you see dried blood streaked across someone's chest, the jokes die quick. Holy shit, Dave muttered under his breath, swerving as far right as he could without tipping into the ditch. I remember feeling the car tilt, smelling damp earth and pine sap through the cracked window. My boyfriend jerked awake, half-lidded, still drunk enough to slur his words. "What the hell? Dude's gonna get killed," he said. The muddy stranger screamed something then, but it got lost under the roar of the engine. He took a step toward the car like he was going to jump on the hood, and that's when they realized he wasn't alone. From the shadows to our left, another set of eyes reflected in the beams, low and glimmering. Two more figures, hunched, crawling, almost came into view. Maybe they'd been hiding, waiting for someone to slow. Maybe they were drawn by the same urge, the same kind of terror that had gotten the first guy chased off into this forest of pines. Dave floored it. The car lunged forward so hard I smacked my head against the seat back. The dashboard lights flickered as we shot through that patch of road, leaving behind whatever hell we'd stumbled into. We were laughing then, some nervous, adrenaline-fueled, hysterical shit. One minute, we're seeing a guy covered in blood waving for help. The next, it's like he never existed. We slowed back down after a mile or so, the road curving left by a stand of maples. Everyone was breathing heavy like we'd run a race. "Okay," Dave said, voice shaky. "That was fucked. But you know what's even weirder?" He pointed ahead. There off the shoulder, about 50 yards from the road, headlights glowed between the trees. A dark-colored sedan was parked in a clearing so overgrown with brambles you almost missed it. It wasn't on a pull-off or driveway, just half buried in the woods, tires sunk in mud, engine off. No one was moving inside, but you could see shadows shifting past the windows. My boyfriend's friend, Sarah, swallowed eyes wide. That guy, he ran right past that car to get to us, she whispered. Why would he do that if he had a ride? Nobody had an answer. We all just looked at each other, at that car, and felt something coil tight in our stomachs. The woods were so quiet you could hear distant water drips, leaves rustling like the wind was whispering secrets. Your breath caught in your throat, hands sweaty on the steering wheel. Dave shook his head. Nope, fuck this. Let's get the hell out of here. He slammed the car into gear and peeled away, fishtailing a little in the loose gravel. We went another 10 minutes before any sign of civilization. Maybe a lone farmhouse with a porch light hanging like a totem in the dark. That's when we realized we'd driven past our exit. Tensions were high. Nobody wanted to admit they were lost. Just ask Siri, my boyfriend said, fumbling for his phone. But the screen read no service. He tried toggling airplane mode, restarting it. Nothing. The whole stretch of road was dead zone central. And trust me, there's nothing more soul-crushing than realizing you're completely cut off at the mercy of whatever's out there. We ended up pulling into that farmhouse's driveway. The owner, bless her heart, let us use her landline. She sounded sleepy, but nice enough. She patched Dave through to a tow service that also did rides. We paid cash, telling the dispatcher to hurry because we'd seen something out here, though none of us had the words to describe it. Maybe freaks in the woods. That felt lame. We were all too shaken to speak normally. While we waited, Sarah rolled down her window. Do you think he wanted help, or? She trailed off. The question hung there, and I saw in their faces they all wondered the same. Was that guy running at us because he wanted to be saved, or because he wanted to kill us? Who knows? In the dark, anything seems possible. I leaned forward, peering into the trees, trying to remember exactly where we'd seen him, but there was nothing. No footprints, no tire tracks, no muddy smears on the road. It was like the whole thing was scrubbed clean. The tow truck arrived about 20 minutes later. The driver was a middle-aged dude named Randy, wearing a faded denim jacket and a cigarette dangling from his lips. We piled into his cab, 4 of us in the passenger seat, me still half asleep, and told him to just get us wherever. He hummed a bit, then asked, "Y'all okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." We told him about the guy in the road, the parked car. He listened without blinking, then said, "There used to be a logging company back in those woods. Shut down in the 90s after a crazed worker went missing. Word is he never left. Folks say they see him stumbling out into traffic sometimes. He tapped the steering wheel. Always shirtless, always hurt. Happens more than you'd think." My boyfriend's eyes got big. "You're kidding." "Nah," Randy said, shrugging. "People like to talk." We were silent the rest of the way home. None of us asked for details. What do you even say? "Hey, thanks for telling us our blood-caked hitchhiker might be a ghost." It didn't feel any better, honestly. If anything, it made it worse. That night, I woke up to my phone buzzing. My boyfriend texting me from his apartment. Did I ever mention that the logging guy disappeared after he killed 2 other workers in '93? They never found their bodies. Some say he's still looking for someone to pay. I tossed and turned, heart pounding. Every creak in the apartment sounded like wood snapping in the woods. I imagined him, or whatever he was, scratching at the door, eyes glowing when the high beams hit his face. The next morning, we checked the news archives. There it was. A local rag from '94. Logging accident turns deadly. They let me read the microfiche at the library. 2 men shot, 1 missing, no bodies recovered. 50 years later, that felt closer than ever. It's been months now, but every time I'm a passenger late at night, I tense up. I imagine that guy crashing through the trees, his arms outstretched, silent, except for the sound of his own ragged breaths. I replay how the headlights caught the blood on his skin. Sometimes I swear I hear him in the distance, crying for help or vengeance. I still can't tell which. I think about it all the time and wonder, if they had stopped, what would have happened to us? There I was asleep in the back seat, a drunk girl passed out, and 4 idiots thinking a high beam would keep them safe. Would he have smiled and accepted a ride? Or would he have climbed through the window and pulled us into those woods? There's no way to know. All I know is let's not meet ever again, even if I'm asleep in the backseat of a car. I was debating whether or not to put this here because I usually don't ever post anything, but a friend of mine convinced me as it perhaps could be helpful to others in similar situations. The title is a supposition as I genuinely have no idea how to explain this. So yeah, this happened last year, early autumn. That weird in-between time when it's not hot anymore, but the cold hasn't settled in just yet. That liminal space between seasons where the air always feels a little off. I had this small freelance job I was doing on the side, delivering refurbished electronics for a guy I knew. Nothing shady, just a dude fixing old laptops and stuff, and selling them off mostly on eBay or Facebook Marketplace. I dropped them off at pickup lockers or pack and ship shops. That day, I had 2 deliveries. One went smooth, and the second one was out on this back road off the main highway, just past the industrial part of town. Not completely rural, but the kind of area where you'll drive for 5 or 10 minutes and see maybe one gas station, maybe a boarded-up diner, maybe nothing at all except trees and some distant construction. I wasn't expecting anything weird. I don't usually expect anything, to be honest. I just drive, listen to music or a podcast, and get it over with. But something about the area was immediately not right. It wasn't just the location. It was like the silence around it. The way the trees seemed too still. The air felt heavier than usual, even inside my car. Anyway, I pulled into this Shell station. One of those sad little ones where the lights always flicker and the pavement's cracked. The locker where I had to drop off the package was on the opposite side of the road at another station one that looked like it had been part of a chain but had its logos stripped off. Think faded plastic signs, rusted over pumps, and graffiti you could barely read anymore. I parked at the Shell, grabbed the box from the passenger seat, and crossed over on foot. The road wasn't busy. Maybe 2 or 3 cars passed while I walked, but I still had to wait a second before crossing. No big deal. When I got to the locker kiosk, I immediately knew something was wrong. The screen was dead, completely black. The whole thing looked like it hadn't been touched in weeks. Dust on the keypad, spider webs in the corner of the screen. A little yellow sticker slapped crooked on the side said permanently closed in all caps. No warning online, nothing, just gone. I stood there like an idiot for a second, debating whether I should call the guy I was working for or just head back and sort it out later. That's when I heard the engine. It was a diesel rumble, deep and too loud for how quiet the area had been up until then. I turned around and saw this truck. Not a full semi, more like a mid-sized delivery truck, the kind those local courier companies use. No markings on the side, just a big white box on wheels with some streaks of dirt down the back. It had pulled in the same gas station. I was parked it kind of slowly like the driver, wasn't sure if he was supposed to be there or not. I remember squinting a little because of the sun, trying to make out if it was a delivery service I recognized. But no FedEx, no DHL, not even a random local logo, just plain white. That already felt off. Anyway, I start walking back across the street, figuring I'll just toss the box back in the car and deal with it later. As I'm halfway across, I see the driver, a guy in his late 40s or early 50s, stocky build, greasy hair poking out from under a cap. The kind of guy who could blend in anywhere, which in itself is kind of unsettling. He steps out real casually like he's done this 1,000 times. He sees me walking and waves. Just a quick lazy wave like we're old buddies. I give him a polite nod. You know, the kind you give a stranger just to be courteous, but also to signal you're not interested in small talk, and keep walking to my car. And then he calls out, "Hey buddy, you mind giving me a hand real quick?" I stopped, not because I wanted to help, but because the way he said it was just strange. Not panicked, not rushed, just too casual, like it was already a done deal. "What's up?" I asked, keeping a decent amount of space between us. I'm not naive. I've seen enough bad shit in the world to know that even broad daylight doesn't mean anything anymore. He walks over a bit closer, not threateningly, but faster than I was comfortable with, and says, "Battery's dead. Damn thing's been acting up all week. You think you could help me jump it?" Just a quick boost, man. Won't take but a minute. Now here's the thing. I don't know jack about jumping a battery. I've seen it done maybe once or twice, but I wouldn't trust myself to do it correctly. I told him that straight up. Sorry, man. I don't really know how to do that. I'd probably just mess it up. He didn't back off. Just kind of chuckled and said, it ain't hard. I'll do it. I just need your car. That right there. That phrase. I just need your car. It's like a switch flipped in my head. All the polite excuses evaporated. I shook my head, took a step back, and said, nah, sorry. I gotta get going. He stood there for a second. Not angry, not pleading, just watching me. His face didn't move much. He wasn't frowning, but his eyes, they looked empty. Not sad, not tired, just blank. I turned and walked fast to my car, unlocked it, got in, and shut the door. I didn't even look back. My hands were shaking just a bit enough that I fumbled the key, getting it into the ignition. Now here's where shit gets weirder. I hadn't even turned the key yet when I saw, in my rear view, the truck pulling out of the lot. No hosetaschen, no struggling with the battery. Just started up like nothing had ever been wrong with it, and drove off. Like that. Just gone. I sat there in silence for a minute, staring at the steering wheel, waiting for my heart to slow down. Then I finally turned the key and started the car, drove off, and merged back onto the highway. And the whole time I kept thinking, what the hell just happened? Why fake a dead battery if your truck works fine? Why wait for someone across the road just to try and get access to their car? Was he watching me the whole time? I don't know. And I hate that I don't know. I didn't report it because honestly, what would I even say? The guy tried to get me to let him use my car, but then drove off. There's no crime in that. He didn't touch me, didn't threaten me, but it felt wrong. Every part of it felt wrong. I told a few people, my girlfriend, a couple friends, and they all had the same reaction. That's creepy as hell. Good on you for walking away. And yeah, sure, I'm glad I didn't fall for it, but it still bothers me. Not just what happened, but what could have happened. What if I'd said yes? What if I popped my hood and walked over? What if he'd shoved me in that truck? Nobody was around. The station was dead. No cameras that I could see. Just trees and heat and silence. It eats at me sometimes when I think about it late at night, that there are people out there, predators, who don't look like monsters, who don't need the cover of darkness, who'll smile and ask for help like it's the most normal thing in the world. And maybe they won't do anything, maybe it's all just a test. But what if it's not? What if you're the one time they go through with it? Anyway, please, if you're ever alone on the road, do not interact with strangers who stop by. And do not get out of your car unless absolutely necessary. When I was around 25 years old, I was working at a tiny restaurant that served desserts. It was a pretty hidden and quiet location, so I was there alone in the mornings. There was nothing glamorous about that place. It was one of those hole-in-the-wall shops tucked between a laundromat and an old video store that barely made rent. The neon open sign flickered half the night, and by dawn the parking lot was empty except for the stray shopping carts from the supermarket next door. I like it that way. No rush hours, no screaming customers. Just me, the espresso machine, and a handful of regulars who dripped in at dawn for a pain or chocolate or a slice of cheesecake with their black coffee. I worked the opening shift. I'd unlock the door at 5:30 a.m., turn off the alarm, flip on the lights, and crank up the playlist. Usually some lo-fi beats or old Motown, depending on my mood. By 6, the ovens were humming, and I'd start pulling out trays of croissants, eclairs, cinnamon rolls, whatever pastry had risen properly that night. I'd wipe down the counters, refill the sugar jars, and get the machine warmed up. Routine, safe, predictable. But that morning something felt off. I noticed it the second I slid open the glass door to let in the chill air. Beyond a misted window, a pale car idled at the curb. I'd never seen it parked there before. A rickety old minivan. One of those hand-me-down vehicles that rattled so much you half expected it to fall apart if you tapped the brake too hard. I shrugged it off. Maybe someone was picking up an early order. I set to work humming my playlist under my breath, unaware that I was being watched as I lined up the pastries under the heat lamps. At 7:02 a.m. the door chimed. A man in his late 40s strolled in coat collar flipped up and leaned on the counter, scanning me with those icy blue eyes. "Morning," he said, voice smooth like cheap bourbon. "Morning," I replied, not looking up. "What can I get you?" He didn't order anything, just stood there watching me. Finally, he muttered, "You look younger than that." He glanced at the little laminated name tag on my chest. 19, right? I froze mid-wipe, my rag dangling between my fingers. 25, I said, forcing a tight smile. "Just look young." He tilted his head, appraising me. You got a good head on your shoulders, though. Smart eyes." He took out a pack of cigarettes, tapped one free. "You ever think about changing jobs? Something better?" I bristled. I've been content with my $20 an hour gig. It covered rent, groceries, and if I was careful, a night out with friends once in a while. I wasn't impressed by mystery job offers. "Not really," I said, folding my arms. "I like where I'm at." He smirked, tapping his cigarette like I'd just made the world's biggest mistake. "I could get you into something. Pay $7 more. Plus benefits. You're smart. You're pretty. You'd clean up good in a suit." I shook my head. "Look, I'm fine. Just here to make my morning shift." "Oh, come on," he said, smoke curling between his lips. "I know how it is. I've got plenty of connections." He snapped his fingers, and weirdly, I felt a chill. "It's near the outskirts. Big facility day, shifts, weekends off." "You in?" I shrugged and tried to ignore him, but he wouldn't let up. He launched into this rambling story about his marriage. How his wife was cool with his affairs, how he'd once brought in a 19-year-old someone taught her about life, and now she was happy and grateful. His voice got lower when he said, "grateful," like he expected me to be grateful too. I felt my skin crawl. Who the hell was this guy? At one point, a car rolled by outside, and someone honked. He waved cheerfully and said, "See? Everybody knows me around here." Through the glass, I could see some poor soul in a pickup truck give him this weird wave back like they were buddies. But I didn't recognize the face. He leaned in close, so close I could smell stale whiskey on him. He produced a crumpled sheet of paper, the kind you fold and refold until the edges are ragged. He flattened it on the counter. "License to carry," he said, proudly tapping it, like carrying a concealed weapon was something to brag about. "That's nice," I mumbled, grabbing the paper. I peered at it. There was a name scrawled in shaky handwriting and an official-looking stamp half ripped off. I handed it back, but he held on to it. "Just shows I'm legit," he said, slipping it into his coat pocket. I tried to focus on wiping the counter, but my heart was hammering. Who does this to a stranger? My hands trembled so bad the rag tore. He looked at that tear, then at me, then laughed, this low, unsettling chuckle. "I met a lot of girls who'd kill for a job like this, and I can get it for you." I forced out, "I have to go to work," thinking maybe my sister would call to pick me up. If he got that I had backup, maybe he'd back off. But he just waved a hand like I'd said nothing. "Oh, you're shy. I get it. We'll keep it casual. Just a ride, that's all." His grin spread slow like he was savoring something. I felt exposed, standing there in my apron in full view of the empty restaurant. I wanted to run. I wanted to slam the door and disappear. Instead, I mumbled something about my car being in the shop and my sister picking me up, and locked up my rhythm in one long sentence. So he'd shut up. He cocked his head. "Sister," he drawled. "Let's have her come too. Family's always welcome." That hammering in my chest grew louder. "Okay, fuck this." I yanked off my name tag and tossed it on the counter. "Look, here's my number," I said, scribble my digits on a napkin. "Call me if you really have something. Otherwise, please leave." He eyed the napkin, then looked me dead in the eye. "I'll be back," he said, pocketing it. I watched him stroll out the door without saying goodbye. I couldn't breathe. For a long minute, I just stood there listening to the door chime echo in the empty room. Then I went to the back office, pulled up my phone, and Googled that company name he'd finally given me in a half-assed mumble. Nothing. No website, no address. I plugged the rough area he described into Google Maps. Just field an old highway, maybe 2 warehouses, but nothing that looked anything like a factory. No big complex, no sign that this place existed. My stomach lurched. What had I just walked into? Who was this guy really? And why did he want me so bad? I texted my sister earlier than planned. "Hey, can you swing by now?" Something weird happened. I just want to get out of here." She called right back concerned. 15 minutes later, she pulled up and her Honda Civic waved, and I practically sprinted into the passenger seat. As we pulled away, I craned my neck back toward the restaurant. And there he was, sitting in that beat-up minivan engine idling parked just around the corner, so I couldn't see from inside the car. My sister didn't notice. She was adjusting the air conditioning, blasting pop music to shake off the early morning grogginess. But me, I stared at him until we turned onto the main road, and he vanished from sight. I never saw him again. It took me weeks to stop looking over my shoulder. I replayed every minute in my mind, his crooked grin, that dumb sheet of paper, the way he leaned in so close I could count the little scars on his neck. I imagined all the terrible things he could have done if I'd gone with him. I couldn't tell anyone. Part of me felt ashamed, like I'd been too stupid to stand my ground. If I just said no, harder, maybe he'd have backed off. But another part of me blamed myself for ever letting him brush that napkin against my fingers, for letting him see me tremble. Eventually, I told a friend, late at night with the lights off, voice shaking, what happened. She was furious, lectured me for not calling the police. I cried and said I was sorry, that I was a mess. I had an issue with dissociation due to past life experiences. And although I was 25, I was much more naive than late 25-year-olds. You never know what people are about, especially with him showing me his license to carry. I hope that me not reporting it didn't get anyone else hurt. This happened a few years ago. A friend from school told me that she moved off her parents' house and she was renting a room in a house in a good neighborhood. At the moment, I was living abroad, so when I flew back to my home country in South America, she invited me to her house. When I landed at the airport, the sun was already dipping below the horizon. My friend Carla texted me a pin drop and told me she'd pick me up in 20 minutes. I remember clutching my backpack in the taxi, staring out at palm trees, lining wide boulevards that still smelled like rain, thinking how crazy it felt to be home after 2 years away. Carla and I go way back. Met in 3rd grade, bunked together at summer camps, even got kicked out of class for talking too much. But I hadn't seen her since graduation, and she'd been through something huge. So when she said she was renting this weird old house, I was both curious and a little anxious. When she swung the car into the driveway, my jaw dropped. The place was giant. 2 stories, pastel yellow stucco with faded brown trim, shutters crooked like teeth. A big pool sat in the backyard, water green as swamp slime, leaves floating on the surface. The front yard had these overgrown hedges that barely let you see the windows. A single dim porch light flickered as Carla hopped out, grinning, her hair pulled up in a messy bun. "Welcome to my creepy-ass crib," she laughed, slapping the car roof. We stepped inside, and it was like walking into a time warp. Everything was from the 1970s. Wood-paneled walls that felt greasy shag carpet, stained in God knows what color, heavy floral drapes hanging lifeless over dirty windows. There was no sign any renovation had ever happened. The furniture was mismatched. Pale green vinyl sofa that squeaked when you sat on it, an ugly glass and chrome coffee table, a rickety dining set with 1 chair missing. On a shelf in the living room sat an old Minnie Mouse doll, plastic face, cracked bow, faded pink, staring at me with soulless eyes. I almost asked Carla why in the hell someone kept that thing, but she beat me to it. "Don't touch the doll. Moving it brings bad vibes for days." We cracked open beers and headed to the patio beside the pool. The air smelled of chlorine and mildew. She poured us some sweet made-infused cocktail she'd learned to make during quarantine, her little mix of old and new. As the sun dropped behind palm fronds, she started telling me shit I wasn't prepared for. Her landlord, the current owner of this house, was the daughter of a notorious dictator's right-hand man. Back in the 70s, this guy was infamous for rounding up suspected communists, torturing them, making them vanish. Carla said that the daughter and her siblings inherited everything when his regime fell, and they'd lived off that blood money ever since. None of them held real jobs. They were all too fucked up by what they grew up around. She squinted at the pool, swirling her drink. The last time I was here late at night, I heard muffled screams from the basement. I thought it was a party downstairs, but when I went to check, everything was silent. Her voice dropped so low, I leaned in half, expecting someone to shout at us from the dark. She laughed to mask the fear in her eyes. But really, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some old torture equipment hidden behind those doors. I shivered though the night wasn't cold. The house felt alive, heavy, watchful. I tried to brush it off. It's just an old house, Carla. Shit settles, noises happen. But even as I said it, I doubted myself. There was something about the way the floorboards creaked like footsteps pacing above us, even though no one lived on the second floor. We smoked on the patio until the streetlights popped on edges of lampshade halos glowing in the dusk. Carla's phone buzzed, her roommate Esteban wondering if she needed anything. "Now we're good," she texted back. Then she sighed and said, "Tomorrow I'll give you the grand tour. You'll see what I mean." I nodded, finishing my drink, but sleep felt miles away. The next afternoon, she took me on that tour. Inside, every corner held an artifact. Faded portraits in ornate frames. Grandpa in full uniform with medals lined the hallway. His face was stern eyes, almost alive, watching us. In the office, dusty wooden shelves sagged under folders stuffed with yellow paperwork. I opened one and saw typed lists of names, columns of dates, birthdays, death dates, locations. I slammed it shut. "Jesus, Carla, is this all from him?" She shrugged. His family never threw shit away. On the desk lay an old dictaphone. I half expected to press play and hear someone begging for mercy. Down the hall, she led me to a door with a heavy padlock. "Basement," she said, punching in a code and lifting the latch. The door groaned open. We climbed steps into cold, damp air. 4 tiny windows high up, iron bars rusted red, let in slivers of weak light. The walls were bare concrete, scratched, as if someone had clawed at them. I saw a thick chain dangling from a hook, footprints in the dust. A smell like wet earth, and old blood hung heavy. I gulped, heart pounding. "You ever come down here at night?" I asked. She shook her head. "No way in hell." Back upstairs, the evening wore on. We played old records she'd found, a brittle vinyl of tango music, and sipped whiskey while the vinyl hissed. The house settled around us. A distant thud, the soft whistle of wind through broken seals in a window. At one point, I glanced down the hallway and thought I saw someone's silhouette at the far end. I rubbed my eyes. When I looked again, nothing. Carla must have noticed my stare. She joked, "You're seeing ghosts now?" I forced a laugh, but my gut twisted. That night, I crashed on the pull-out couch in the living room. Carla insisted she'd sleep in her room upstairs, but I begged to swap. Something about that basement, that office, that doll creeped me out. She agreed. I fell asleep to the low hum of an old ceiling fan and the tick of a clock that sounded like a heartbeat. Around 3, I jolted awake. The clock read 2:57. The house was silent, so silent I could hear my own breathing. Then I heard it, a soft scrape like metal dragging across stone downstairs. My pulse hammered. I grabbed my phone, dialed Carla, but the line went straight to voicemail. I whispered her name. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, padded above me, like someone was walking the upstairs hallway. I froze, every muscle locked. Then a low, guttural moan rolled through the house, vibrating the walls. The moan turned into a scream, so raw I felt in my chest. I scrambled to my feet, stumbling toward the door. The living room light was out. I fumbled for the switch, knocking over a lamp that shattered. In the glow of the hallway bulb, I saw it. A white, luminous human figure gliding past the front door to the kitchen, its edges blurred like smoke. Its head angled downward, shoulders hunched. It moved in a blink, 2 seconds at most, and vanished around the corner. I swallowed a scream, my throat raw. I never believed in ghosts, but that surge of adrenaline said otherwise. Morning light spilled through the filthy drapes. I was on edge, coffee trembling in my hand. Carla didn't mention a thing about the apparition. She asked if I slept well. I lied, saying fine. At breakfast, she chatted about errands, pretending everything was normal. but I saw her cast nervous glances at the hallway. She looked like she wanted to tell me something, but stopped herself. We spent the day at local cafes, trying to shake the night's terror. But by afternoon, Carla said we should go back. She had to retrieve some files from the office. I felt my stomach twist, but I agreed. Back at the house, I watched her pick through folders, tension in her shoulders. I resisted the urge to ask about the basement. Instead, I poked at that Minnie Mouse doll on the shelf. Its cracked eyes stared into mine. I almost dropped it when I heard a whisper, barely audible, just behind me. "Leave. Carla spoon." "What?" I pointed at the doll. She looked pale. "Don't. Just leave it." She shut the folder hard, the noise echoing. We retreated to the patio. The pool was still green stagnant. Carla pulled out her phone and called her roommate, asking to come join us. 5 minutes later, Esteban rolled up in an old sedan plopping beside us. His eyes were dark curtained. "You hear anything weird last night?" he asked. Carla and I exchanged a glance. He nodded as if reading our minds. I got woken up by banging from the basement. Thought it was the wind, but he trailed off. That night, the three of us sat around the pool, half-drunk beer bottles sweating on the table. Esteban knocked back a shot of tequila and said, "Legend says this place has a spirit. Someone tortured and killed here." Carla's face went slack. "You're kidding." He shook his head. "My cousin used to work for the landlord. He told me there was a secret room where they kept prisoners. No windows, just that tiny Bart hatch. They say some bodies were never buried." His voice dropped to a whisper. "People here, crying, sometimes commands an old radio static." My skin crawled. I pictured that basement cold and dank. I thought about the folders, the dictaphone, the doll. I wanted to get out, but I didn't want to look like a total pansy. I forced a laugh. "Sounds like a horror flick," I said, voice shaking. Carla didn't laugh. She stared at the water, eyes distant. At 1 a.m., Esteban stumbled off to his room, and Carla led me upstairs. We passed the movie room. Rows of dusty chairs facing a blank screen, projectors hanging from the ceiling like eyes. In the hallway, the floor vibrated with a distant rumble. I grabbed her arm. "Carla, can we just leave?" She shook her head pale. "No, I need to find proof. I want to know what happened down there." She flipped on the hallway light, and we crept toward the basement door. My hand hovered over the padlock. She punched in the code. I watched her fingers tremble, and it clicked open. The door swung in, and a wave of cold struck me. Flashlight beams danced on the walls as we descended. The chain was still there, and nearby a rusted metal chair with leather straps. My flashlight landed on a stain that could have been oil or blood. I gagged. Carla crouched to inspect a pile of notebooks, yellowed pages covered in handwriting. Names, dates, little notes on interrogation results. She flipped a page, a drawing of a figure bound to the chair, mouth silent, eyes wide. A sudden crash above made us leap. The door at the top slammed shut. I twisted back, jerking the light upward, but saw only dark. A breeze whipped down the steps. Then a whisper resonated around us. "Nunca escapes. Don't ever escape." My heart thudded. Carla grabbed my hand. "Run," she breathed. We bolted up the stairs, burst through the door, and slammed it shut. The latch caught, but the door rattled like something on the other side was trying to push through. We didn't sleep that night. We sat in my friend's car outside the house until dawn tinted the sky pink. Not one of us wanted to return inside. Carla cried, quietly shaken by what we saw. Esteban muttered that he'd help move her out. I wanted out too, but I hadn't booked another flight home yet. A few weeks later, I texted Carla. She said she'd left, moved back in with her parents. She never went back for her things. When I asked about the doll, she said she left it too. "Some shit you just don't bring with you," she wrote. I never saw that house again, but sometimes I drive by when I'm passing through that neighborhood. The place sits empty now, windows, boarded, lights off. It looks dead, like a mausoleum. I still think about what we heard in that basement. The moans, the scribbled warning, the stain on the floor. I replay that fleeting, ghostly figure in my mind, white and silent, gliding across the hallway. Every time I close my eyes, I see it reminding me that some horrors don't stay buried. That night, I stayed over, but I asked my friend if I could sleep in the same room as her. I was terrified. I'm still in disbelief, but the guy was the toughest military guy during the dictatorship. He was happy to kill communists or socialists. I think this was around May or June. I noticed this car parked across the street from my building during the day. They stayed in there for a while and left. I didn't think much of it. I mean, a lot of cars park around here, but later that week I saw the exact same vehicle again. It was a beat-up black sedan with tinted windows and some rust forming around the wheel wells. The first time I saw it was around noon, just sitting there, engine off the driver's side window, cracked open like someone was letting the heat escape. Then they drove off without even getting out. I shrugged it off as someone looking for a spot and moved on. A couple nights later at around 10 or 11, I was smoking on my balcony when I noticed the headlights flick on. The car pulled in and parked directly opposite my window. My building's streetlights are annoyingly bright, like they want to keep the whole world awake, so I could see the silhouette of a person in the driver's seat. Didn't move, didn't look around, just sat there like they were waiting for something. After 10 minutes, the engine started, the headlights cut out, and the car drove off. I checked the time, 11:22. Weird, but again, I figured maybe they were lost or needed a minute to think. I did notice that the paint on the hood looked scuffed, like someone had used it as a step. Didn't register importance until later. Over the next couple weeks, I barely saw the car. Construction crews had been working on my street, fixing sidewalks, laying pipes, so I assumed the mystery driver was related to that. They were only there for about 2 or 3 weeks, and after everything got repaved, I honestly forgot about the car entirely. But then about 2 weeks ago, it came back. And this time I had a feeling in my gut that something was off. It was a Tuesday, June something. I remember because it had been pouring rain all morning. I ran downstairs to the coffee shop on the corner and grabbed a latte before heading back up. When I got home, I looked out the window and saw the black sedan parked again, same spot. Only this time, there was a kid in the back seat. From the way they sat hunched, and still I would have thought the kid was sleeping, except every once in a while I saw their head shift like they were scanning the surroundings. The adult in the front kept flicking his phone open, looking down, then staring straight ahead back and forth. My heart ratcheted up a notch. I texted my friend Owen, who lives 2 floors below me, just saying, "Hey, weird car across again with kid inside. Keep an eye." He texted back, "What? No, stay safe." That night around 9 or 10, the car pulled and parked, and the driver got out. He stood by the trunk, fiddling with something, maybe adjusting his jacket, maybe checking the tire. Then he leaned over the kid's window as if to talk, but he didn't. He just stared at the building like he was checking every floor. The kid turned and looked at him once, like they didn't appreciate the intense focus. Tense minute passed, then the guy got back and shut the door and waited in the driver's seat. I heard the engine start maybe 20 seconds later, but they didn't leave. They just idled in that spot for almost another 15 minutes before finally backing out and speeding off down the block. Next day, I felt uneasy. I don't get spooked easily, but seeing a child in that situation, just there in the back seat, no toys, no device, felt wrong. At work, I couldn't focus. I kept picturing that kid's eyes half lit by the dashboard, scanning the dark building facade. I tried calling the local PD via the non-emergency line, left a message about a suspicious vehicle. They said they'd send someone by, but you know how it is, probably didn't rise to priority. Around dinner time, I get the text from Owen. Saw cops drive by twice. "You good?" "I replied, "Yay, guess." "Thanks." That night, I set my alarm for every 30 minutes just to glance outside. At midnight, the same headlights cut through the darkness. The sedan crept into the spot. My stomach flipped. I watched through binoculars. They're dustier than I like, but they do the job, and saw the driver slide out again. No kid this time. He paced near the curb, hands buried deep in his pockets, head down. Then he looked up directly at my window. I swear, I caught the reflection of my own gaze in his eyes. I ducked back, heart pounding so hard I thought my ribs might crack. I didn't want him to see me watching. He got back in and idled. After about 10 minutes, he slammed his hand on the steering wheel and drove off. I started jotting things down. Dates, times, the kid, the pacing guy. I called the station again, this time got through to an officer who actually listened. He was polite, took my info, license plate, make, model, approximate color. Said they'd be more vigilant. I hung up feeling slightly better, but only slightly. A couple nights without incident, then so of course last Friday, July 18th, things got, well, way worse. I was on my way home around 8 when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, stop watching or else. No punctuation, just stop watching or else. I froze. Tried to call back, but number was blocked. Chickened out and didn't tell Owen. He'd laugh it off as a prank. Maybe it was, but I didn't think so. That message felt deliberate cold. When I got home, I paced the hallway. I'd left my key card on the coffee table during my random work-from-home lunch, so I buzzed my building's front desk and had to explain why I needed a new one. Felt mortifying. They handed it over, without question, probably chalked it up to me being forgetful. Once inside, I checked the lobby cam feed. Our building's old system grainy, but functional. Nothing. No car. No one lurking. I exhaled, feeling a smidge safe, until I heard footsteps crunching on gravel outside the lobby window. I peered over. There it was. That goddamn black sedan parked on the little gravel path that dead ends at our back entry. I dashed back to my apartment, door locked, it cranked the deadbolt. I sat on the floor, back against the door, phone in hand, ready to dial 911. Then I heard it. The intercom buzzed. My name scrolled on the display. I nearly dropped the phone. It was the building manager's ID. My thumb hovered, but I answered. Static, then the manager. Hey, it's April. We're having some maintenance done on the west elevator, so service will be slow. Let me know if you need anything. Her voice sounded a bit rushed, but normal. I said thanks, hung up, breathing heavily. Why did I feel like it wasn't her? Minutes trickled by in silence. Then, a loud thump on my front door. I jumped up. With shaking hands, I peered through the peephole. No one, just my own hallway dimly lit. I cracked the door an inch. Nothing. I leaned out. Empty hallway. But from the corner of my eye caught movement behind me. I spun around. The other side of my door had a foot in a black boot protruding, angled like someone was leaning. My heart sank. Whoever it was, they'd slipped the door latch. But the deadbolt was still secure. I rushed to the window, threw up the sash, and saw the sedan 3 feet from the building's foundation. The engine off, headlights glaring into the bushes. I cranked on the intercom to reach the front desk again, but it was dead. No dial tone. I tried my cell phone. No signal inside. I slumped onto the couch and dialed 911 on speaker, whispered, somebody's here. I told them my building address, the car description, that they were outside my door. The line crackled. Officer Darren, can you stay calm? We're sending units now. Estimate 5 to 7 minutes. 5 to 7 felt like a century. I grabbed my backpack, shoved in my laptop, and charger keys, wallet, phone charger. I locked the door behind me, then went to the window, lowered myself onto the fire escape, something I hoped to never use, and climbed down to the apartment below mine. Owen answered the door bleary-eyed in his boxers. I shoved him inside and bolted my door. He looked at me puzzled. What the fuck? I showed him the text, my phone. He said, holy shit, I'm calling the cops. I shook my head. No, let them come for you. He grabbed his phone, darted to his window. A minute later, we heard sirens. 2 squad cars pulled up, flashing lights. The officers knocked on his door. We followed them back upstairs. They checked the hallway. No one. They radioed downstairs. North lot abandoned sedan plates are registered to a rental agency, expired. One officer turned to me. Ma'am, did you see anyone? I shook. No. I heard someone try the door. He nodded, writing in his notebook. We'll have patrols continue looping. You see the guy again, call 911 immediately. Next morning, I woke to black and white in the sky. I dragged myself to the window. No car. I thought I was safe. Around 8, I got a call from the rental agency. They traced the plate, said it was rented by a man, Robert Ellis, 42, out of state, no local address. They'd help locate him via credit card usage. I passed the info to the detective, who said he'd see what he could do. That day was a blur of adrenaline. I sent letters to the property manager, the board, every neighbor on our floor warning them. Most thanked me. One complained I was melodramatic. Whatever. Better safe than sorry. That night, I barely slept. Every creak I heard was his footstep. I stared at the ceiling till dawn, imagining that black sedan crawling up the gravel drive. 2 days later, around noon, I heard a loud crash. I ran to the stairwell and saw shattered glass on the lobby floor. The front door was dented, lock shattered. I snapped a picture, emailed it to the building manager. He arrived with a locksmith and rekeyed every door in the place. They set up a sign-in sheet. I felt vindicated. Then, that afternoon, Detective Ramirez called me at work. "We found him," he said. "Ellis. He's in custody at the county jail. Tried breaking into a house uptown." I exhaled like I hadn't in weeks. He told me the kid in his car was his nephew. But resident accounts say they've never seen the kid before, Ramirez said. Ellis's ex-wife vanished 2 years ago. No kids were ever mentioned. We're running DNA tests. I shivered. "Jesus," I whispered. "Thanks, detective." That night, I took a bath. Hot water, Epsom, salts, lavender oil, and let the tension melt. I read until my eyes blurred, then tumbled into bed. I kept the blinds cracked, flashlight on the nightstand. When I woke, the sun was pouring in. No cars, no strangers. I felt normal. Almost. A week later, I got a letter from the PD. Turns out Ellis had a long rap sheet. Break-in, stalking, child endangerment. They found unregistered weapons in his trunk. The kid in the back, not his nephew. A random child he'd kidnapped from a bus stop 6 hours before parking outside my building. They rescued the kid unharmed but shaken. I cried when I read that. If I hadn't called, who knows what could have happened. I ran into Detective Ramirez in the lobby once. I thanked him. He smiled, said, "You did good." Behind him was the black sedan towed and sitting in the lot for evidence. It looked so small and pathetic. I felt relief, anger, and something like guilt for the kid, but mostly thankful. Now I keep my curtains drawn if I'm home alone. I park my car in a locked garage, not on the street. I installed a doorbell camera. I changed my locks again. I even carry pepper spray. I used to think I was safe in my little building, but now I know better. I might be overdoing it. Hell, some people would say I'm paranoid, but I sleep better thinking I did everything I could. I might be jumpy for a while, but whatever, I'll live. I told my building, I told the cops, and I told my friends. I'm not taking any chances. I might be wrong, but it's better to be safe than sorry. I don't know, I'm just not getting a good feeling. Am I taking the proper steps to let my building know? Or do I look dramatic? I know I did right by letting police station know. Since that call, I noticed the police been driving by a lot.